Dust hung in the air like the whole world was holding its breath, and she sat there against the Humvee quiet, bleeding, and way to come for someone who was supposed to be a random evac. The SEALs were still cracking jokes, brushing off the tension of the last firefight until the medic crouched beside her and reached for her arm. The second his fingers touched her sleeve, everything about him changed. His hands hesitated, his eyes narrowed, and suddenly he wasn't treating a civilian anymore, he was examining a mystery. "Yo, guys," he whispered, voice dropping like he'd just seen a ghost. "She's not who we thought she was." The entire squad froze. Every head turned. You could feel the silence hit like a blast wave. Because this woman, the one sitting there calm as stone with blood running down her hand, she carried a presence you don't learn in normal life. You earn that kind of quiet. Minutes earlier, they'd pulled her out of debris thinking she was just another unlucky bystander. She barely spoke, kept her eyes pinned on the horizon, breathing steady like she wasn't even in pain. No panic. No hyperventilating, none of the usual shock, just that unnerving calm. The medic shrugged it off at first until he looked closer. He saw the old scars hidden beneath fresh wounds, the way her fingers kept subconsciously checking angles and distances, the tiny shift in her posture every time a branch snapped in the distance. She didn't move like someone caught in the crossfire. She moved like someone who'd lived in it. And when he finally lifted the thin chain tucked under her collar and saw the tag with a name that had no business being on a civilian, no business being alive at all, his blood ran cold. The team went dead still, no one daring to speak. Because whatever her story was, they all realized one thing at the same time. They hadn't rescued a civilian. They had just stumbled into the path of someone whose past outranked every man standing there. The blast had barely stopped echoing when the SEAL team spotted movement under the collapsed wall. At first, they thought it was debris shifting from the shockwave until a hand pushed through the dust. They rushed over, expecting panic, screaming, confusion. But she wasn't doing any of that. She was quiet. Too quiet. She blinked up at them like she'd just been waiting for someone to lift the concrete off her. No shaking hands, no wild breathing, not even a flinch when they dragged her free. "Tough civvy," one of the guys joked, trying to lighten the moment. She didn't laugh. She just scanned the tree line like she already knew where the next threat was coming from. They tried to sit her down, wrap her arm, give her water, but she refused everything like she'd been through worse and didn't feel like wasting time. The strangest part, she kept watching the team not with fear, but with assessment. Measuring distances, timing how fast they moved, noting their formation without actually looking. Those tiny details should have set off alarms, but the squad was still riding the high of the fight, moving fast, thinking she was just another unlucky civilian. They had no idea they were treating someone who knew this battlefield better than all of them combined. The medic slid beside her, gloves on, posture relaxed, just another wounded evac to deal with. But the moment he rolled her sleeve up, something in his brain clicked. First, the fresh shrapnel wound. Deep, clean, bleeding slow, like she'd instinctively applied pressure perfectly. Then, the older scars beneath it, thin, surgical, too precise to be accidents. He'd seen those patterns before, on people who'd taken hits in places civilians never go. He paused, confused, studying her arm like it was a puzzle someone handed him without instructions. Then came the bigger flags. Her shoulder had an old break that had healed wrong in the way he'd only seen on high-altitude jump injuries. The kind you get when you hit the ground from a halo fall and don't complain about it because the mission mattered more. He pressed gently, checking for reaction. She didn't even blink. Instead, she watched him like he was the one being evaluated. When he reached to stabilize her collar, his fingers brushed a hidden chain under her shirt. She tensed not dramatically, just enough to let him know he'd touched something important. He pulled the tag free, expecting a name, maybe a blood type. What he saw instead made his stomach drop. This wasn't a civilian. This was someone whose records lived behind locked doors, the kind of identity even SEALs weren't supposed to come across. The medic didn't say anything at first. He just stared at the tag like it was radioactive. The squad kept moving around him until he finally muttered, "Guys, you need to see this." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of weight that stops every operator mid-stride. The leader turned, saw the medic's face, and knew instantly something was wrong. SEALs don't spook easy, but whatever he'd found had drained the color from his skin. They gathered slowly, eyes shifting from the medic to the woman. She didn't look up. She didn't defend herself. She didn't react at all. She just sat there calm, breathing steady, like she'd been through this kind of reveal before. One of the guys crouched to meet her eyes, trying to figure her out, but the moment he got close, she spoke for the first time since the rescue, not panicked, not scared. Just a flat, steady warning. If I were you, I'd move. They're flanking left. Every muscle in the team tightened at once. How did she know that? The area was quiet, no visuals, no audio cues. But she called it like she'd been tracking them the whole time. Now the squad looked at her differently, no longer a civilian, no longer a victim, but someone who understood the battlefield at a level none of them expected. Someone dangerous in a calm, controlled way. Someone they'd underestimated from the second they found her. The team didn't waste time. They shifted positions instantly, trusting her warning, even though they didn't understand it yet. When the enemy opened fire moments later from the exact direction she predicted, every man felt a cold ripple down his spine. Lucky guess. No, nobody calls a flank like that without training real training. She pushed herself up, ignoring the medic's protests, and took cover like someone who had done it 1,000 times. Her movements were clean, efficient, not an ounce of wasted energy. She didn't panic or freeze. She took control of her breathing, scanned the terrain, and started calling out routes and blind spots with the precision of a seasoned operator. The SEAL commander watched her, stunned. This woman wasn't just combat experienced, she was skilled in a way that felt familiar, like watching someone from their own world. "Who the hell are you?" one of them asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to a ridge the team hadn't cleared yet and said they're repositioning for a push. "You've got 90 seconds. Her tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. And for the first time since they'd found her, the SEALs followed her lead. Once the firefight died down, the team regrouped, adrenaline finally letting go. The commander motioned for answers. The medic handed over the tag he'd found beneath her collar. The commander looked at it once, and his jaw clenched. He didn't say her name out loud. He didn't need to. Every SEAL there had heard rumors years ago about an operator who vanished off all records after a mission that went sideways overseas. The kind of mission whispered about, but never officially acknowledged. A ghost story among special forces. Someone who supposedly took out a high-value target alone, but never returned to base. Everyone assumed she died, but she didn't. She slipped away, disappeared, until today. When the commander finally asked why she'd been here, she just shook her head. "Wrong place, wrong time," she said, though her eyes told a different story, one filled with things she had no intention of sharing. What she did share was intel on the enemy they were tracking, information too detailed to come from any civilian source. Information that hinted she'd been watching the same threat long before the team arrived. The squad realized something crystal clear. They hadn't rescued her. They'd crossed paths with someone whose shadow still carried weight in the quietest corners of the military world. When the dust finally settled and the last echoes of gunfire faded into the hills, the SEAL team stood in a loose circle around her, not guarding her, not questioning her, but watching her with a new understanding. She wasn't the wounded civilian they thought they'd stumbled across. She wasn't even a former operator who just happened to survive. She was something rarer, something that didn't fit neatly into files or mission logs. She carried the weight of a past she never bragged about, the kind of history that leaves scars deeper than the ones on her skin. And even injured, even quiet, she moved with the presence of someone who had once been trusted with missions most people never hear about. The commander stepped closer, offering her a spot in their formation as they prepared to move. She hesitated for a second, eyes drifting across the battlefield like she was checking for ghosts. Then she nodded and fell in beside them, not above them, not behind them, but with them. No words were exchanged, yet everyone understood. Respect like that isn't given in the field. It's earned, proven, lived. As they walked out together, she kept her gaze forward, bleeding but steady, her steps confident despite the pain. The team knew they'd remember this moment long after the mission ended, the day a stranger reminded them that legends don't need introductions. Sometimes the most dangerous, most capable person on the field is the one who sits in silence, letting everyone underestimate her, until the truth hits harder than any explosion.